I'm Jeremy from Poindexter G, and today we're talking about this old Western gun. So this is a Traditions Big Bore Single Action Army clone. It's a reproduction of the Colt Single Action Army, also known as the Peacemaker, the Colt 45, and the Model 1873. Now the Single Action Army is pretty much the handgun from the Old West. I mean, if you're watching a Western, chances are the Cowboy's carrying one of those. Now, there are a lot of companies making clones of them, and the reasons for that is that they're very popular. The new Colts that are made now run a good bit, and then the old ones go really expensive. So there's a lot of different places making these, and a number of them are actually Italian. You have two big companies making reproduction Old West guns out of Italy. You've got them making the Single Action Armies, a lot of the lever guns, Schofields, trapdoors, and just bunches of them. And the companies that do that the most are Pietta and Uberti. Now those are all imported by various different companies here in the United States, but the ones most associated with each of those manufacturers is going to be Cimarron for Uberti and Traditions for Pietta, which is what we have here. We call this the Big Bore because there's two different versions. They're the ones that Traditions has sold the longest, which is a 22 version, and then you have the ones in the larger calibers such as 357 or 45 Colt. This one is in fact 45 Colt, which is the round that is most associated with the Single Action Army. So let's go ahead and take a look at this guy here. So here on this side we have the caliber, which in this case is 45 Long Colt. On the bottom we have Traditions, Old Saybrook, Connecticut, Pietta, Italy. And on this side we have the warning to read the owner's manual before use because yeah, it's a gun, it's dangerous. I didn't realize that this gun was dangerous when I bought it. You also have the serial number marked right under here. Here on the grips we've got a nice American Eagle with E Pluribus Unum on it. So yay yay America. So loading this works a little bit different than a modern revolver. It doesn't have the swing out cylinder that you're used to. This is a gate loader. So you have to open this gate up, put it one notch back to let you rotate the cylinder freely, and then basically you have to load in this way. I don't have any dummy rounds, so we're just gonna load the brass in here because it'll work fine for what we need. And you have to do that to load the thing. And then you're asking me, okay, how do we get these things out when we're done? Well, that's done right here with the extractor, which pushes like that. You open up the gate, put that back one click so it rotates, and then pop them out that way. Rotate the cylinder. And you do this until all of your rounds are out. Now they've generally kept this, for the most part, looking a lot like the old Single Action Armies. They've kept the grip the same length, which for most people ends up being a little short because, you know, the pinkies kind of hang off. They've kept the smaller trigger guard, which is typical for these. You've got the same basic dimensions on them. They do have different barrel lengths available. This is one of the more common ones. You've got the typical sights that are there from the era. This groove here, which actually is blocked by the hammer until you bring that down. Now, some places in here where they differ is going to be the grips. We have a two-piece grip which go on either side of it there. The old Single Action Armies had a single piece that went over. It has a different number of spots that the hammer can click into. So the old ones had 4 clicks for C-O-L-T. That's what a lot of people say. Well, this one has C-O-L. Okay, it's got 3 clicks. But the biggest mechanical difference in these is the presence of the transfer bar. Now, the reason the transfer bar there is for safety reasons. The old ones had the firing pin built onto the hammer here. And so that would come through and the hammer would directly strike the center of the cartridge there to set it off. When it would be really dangerous would be if you had a round in that top chamber there of the cylinder. You would have the firing pin and the hammer resting right up against the primer, and all it would take would be a good bump there, and you could set that thing off when you didn't mean to. So a lot of the modern ones have a transfer bar in there, which is basically this guy right in here. So basically the hammer hits the transfer bar, and the transfer bar hits the firing pin. The transfer bar only goes into place when the trigger is pulled. You can watch here and see the transfer bar rise and lower as we pull the trigger there. So when it's sitting in a position like this, it can't make contact because the transfer bar is down. So now that we've talked about loading this thing, how about we go out and see how she shoots? And of course now we'll unload. Unload. Now the takedown on this is not particularly complicated. It's pretty much just taking the cylinder out. Now the way that you would do that would be by removing this pin right here that holds it in place. Now you've got that pin there. You've also got this little spring-loaded bit right there that holds it in. Now this is going to be stiff the first time you pull this out, but it will eventually get a little bit easier to do. You're going to push on that, grab this, and she pulls out. Then it's going to be just open the gate and pop the cylinder out. And you can see that cylinder right there. Basically, to put it back in, we'll set it right here. You just kind of rotate and push back on it until it eventually goes into place there. We flip the gate closed. Now we can go back to putting this back in here. We'll have to put this in here. We'll have to push down on this to let us push that in. Now you notice it's hit there. We don't have the cylinder aligned quite perfectly, so we've got to work with aligning the cylinder while we push that button and push down on this. It's a lot to do at the same time, but we can get it in there. There we go. And now it's in there. And you can see it will go back to functioning just like it's supposed to. So what are my general thoughts on this? Some of the places on here, the machining is not quite as precise. You know, we've got a little bit of a lip here in some of these where it's nice. Almost feels like one solid little piece there on the actual Colts. When the cylinder is indexing on these, it gets a little bit of slop in there. You can see how much slop we have in that spot there. And that makes it a little bit more fun to get these ejected out of there. The Colts actually line up a little bit better there. It's little small things like that that aren't quite as nice as the Colts or some of the higher end reproductions. Well, I think for the money that this is a very nice reproduction of a Single Action Army. It doesn't have to break the bank like a lot of them will do. So this is a great little gun here, and it's a good way to appreciate one of the old guns from the Old West. So I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, be sure to like or comment. You can also subscribe to my channel to make sure that you don't miss any of the videos that I post. I'm Jeremy with Poindexter G. And we'll see you next time.